Okay, so for next time, I think we do need to start using the Wayne's World approved sound off when we go live.
The Wayne's World approves. I need to remember what this was.
It's pretty classic. It's five, four.
Perfect.
So you only say five and four. You don't say.
You don't just have a big old clap off with it.
No. Yeah. Oh. Um. Yeah. I just remembered I needed to mute the live stream.
That might
So
be
I think
helpful.
we're off to a really good start, I think, for our second episode of
Yeah, it's
socially distanced reading.
yeah, so this time there's no snap crackle and pop.
I
It's
mean, that I
perfect.
can tell.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. It's like, keep the snap, crackle, and pop in my cereal, not in my serially read aloud book. I came up with that while I was talking. Are you amazed?
Good job. That was good.
Thank you. Thanks. Um, yeah, what did you do today?
I did a number of things today
Mhm.
that I will discuss at length for the next 1 hour and 35 minutes. So I woke
Mm.
up this morning and I got out of bed, rolled out of. I can't do this.
I couldn't either, so I'm glad that you stopped. You want to know what I did today?
What'd you do?
I dropped a 16-ounce glass jar of coffee beans from the highest shelf down to the counter, and it shattered. So then I cleaned it. It was pretty cool.
Oh my,
That was a pretty cool time for me
that sounds
in
very
my life.
uncomfortable. Did you manage to save the beans?
No, they were compromised.
Oh no,
But I did have a backup jar, so that was good.
that is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I
We
also cleaned the
had
bathroom.
we had
Mhm.
an Easter dinner tonight that involved chili. It was great.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, chili. Not the
Mm,
worst thing that's ever been invented
it's pretty
for
great.
food. If you're watching and you know me, you know how I feel about chili. Do you want to hear like one of my saddest food stories ever?
Okay, what
While we
is it?
wait for people to come in. So, in over the summer, so chili is my least favorite food. I think it's disgusting. Okay,
Okay.
that's just like my thing. I'm sure whatever you had was very good, very well made, but for me, any kind of chili is the worst. So I went on like I was with my aunt and her family and my family, and we went on like a cabin trip together. And my aunt had pre-made chili and then froze it into ice packs, right? So that like the other thing that you don't know about me is my other least favorite thing is leftover soup.
Oh no.
So not only is it chili, it's also leftover soup, right? So awful. And I was like, well, maybe she forgot I was a vegetarian. I'll be like, I can't eat it. No, it's specifically vegetarian chili, right? So here we are in this cabin. And then I had gone on like 3 dates with this guy. And then he texted me and he's like, oh, I actually connected with someone who I know and like we're in love now. So I don't want to see you anymore. And I was like, ooh, bummer. And then I had to
Wow.
go downstairs and then just like eat this chili. It was really
Oh,
awful.
that's rough.
I know. And then afterward, I was like, Mom, are you proud of me for eating all that chili? And she's like, yeah, you did really well. I'm really proud of you. I know that was hard. This was this summer. So
Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, I hope he's happy now, with whoever.
I hope he's happy. I hope
Yeah.
he's happy now.
Keep singing.
I hope he's happy that I da 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 da. I don't know the words to the
Uh-huh.
song.
Beautiful. Amazing work.
I hope he found his true
Okay.
love now. There
Okay,
we go.
so we have some people. We are gonna do our chapters 3 and 4, but before I did prepare kind of like a cold open. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Robert, are you ready? Okay. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Okay, watch. Pan.
Pan who?
Okay. Uh Pan. Cake. It's a pancake.
Hey!
Hey Robert, do you want to see me eat this entire pancake in one bite?
Yes, do it.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
I am resisting so hard doing a racehorse announcer voice right now.
Do it.
And here we see Lily T in the final 10 yards of the pancake, coming close on the single bite challenge. She'll be there in just a few moments. Oh, and see, she's taking the whole pancake in. Almost there. There, there. Oh, oh. She's coming in for the big final chew. It's getting close here, folks. Oh, a bit of a shudder there. Bit of a struggle. Difficulty coming in. And the swallow. And oh, pieces left over. Getting in there. Clearing it out. And oh, let's see what
Do
the
it.
output. It's done.
Yeah, see?
That's it, folks.
Pancake
You've seen it.
theory.
She has succeeded.
But importantly, could you hear me eating?
Yes. Every
Okay,
now
you
and
ready
then.
to read?
Yes.
You ready to read?
So, hi,
Give me some
everyone.
water.
We are here, socially distanced reading. That's myself, Robert H.,
Just do it. Just say my
and
name.
and one Lily T. We are here reading the Phantom Tollbooth. Tonight's chapters are chapters 3 and 4, and we're going to go
Mhm.
ahead and begin with chapter 3. I will be narrating today, and here we are in chapter 3. Welcome
Mm.
to Dictionopolis.
You must excuse my gruff conduct.
The watchdog said, after they'd been driving for some time.
But you see, it's traditional for watchdogs to be ferocious.
Milo was so relieved at having escaped the doldrums that he assured the dog that he bore him no ill will and, in fact, was very grateful for the assistance.
Splendid!
Shouted the watchdog.
I'm very pleased. I'm sure we'll be great friends for the rest of the trip. You may call me Talk.
That is a strange name for a dog who goes tick, 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 tick all day, said Milo. Why don't they call you...
Don't say it.
gasped the dog, and Milo could see a tear well up in his eye. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, said Milo, not meaning to hurt his feelings,
That's all right.
said the dog, getting hold of himself.
It's an old story and a sad one, but I can tell it to you now. When my brother was born, the first pup in the family, my parents were overjoyed and immediately named him Tick in expectation of the sound they were sure he'd make. On first winding him, they discovered to their horror that instead of going tick, 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 he went tock, 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 tock. They rushed to the Hall of Records to change the name, but too late. It had already officially been inscribed and nothing could be done. When I arrived, they were determined not to make the same mistake twice, and since it seemed logical that all their children would make the same sound, they named me Tuck. Of course, you know the rest. My brother is called Tick because he goes tuck, 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 tuck. And I am called Tuck because I go tick, 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 tick. And both of us are forever burdened with the wrong names. My parents were so overwrought that they gave up on having any more children and they devoted their lives to doing good work among the poor and hungry.
But how did you become a watchdog? Interjected Milo, hoping to change the subject, as Talk was sobbing quite loudly now.
That
He said, rubbing a paw in his eye.
is also traditional. My family have always been watchdogs from father to son almost since time began. You see,
He continued, beginning to feel better.
once there was no time at all, and people found it inconvenient. They never knew whether they were eating lunch or dinner, and they always were missing meal trains. So time was invented to help them get track of the day and get places when they should. When they began to count all the time that was available, what with 60 seconds in a minute, and 60 minutes in an hour, and 24 hours a day, and 365 days in a year, it seemed as if there was much more than it could ever be used. If there's so much of it, it couldn't be very valuable, was the general opinion, and it soon fell into disrepute. People wasted it and even gave it away. Then we were given the job of seeing that no one wasted time again.
He said, sitting up proudly.
It's hard work, but a noble calling, for you see,
And now he was standing on the seat, one foot on the windshield, shouting with his arms outstretched.
it is our most valuable possession, more precious than diamonds. It marches on, and it and tide wait for no man, and
At that point in the speech, the car hit a bump in the road, and the watchdog collapsed in a heap on the front seat, with his alarm again ringing furiously. Are you all right? Shouted Milo.
oof.
Grunted Talk.
Sorry to get carried away, but I think you get the point.
As they drove along, Talk continued to explain the importance of time, quoting the old philosophers and poets and illustrating each point with gestures that brought him perilously close to tumbling headlong from the speeding automobile. Before long, they saw in the distance the towers and flags of Dictionopolis sparkling in the sunshine, and in a few moments they reached the Great Wall and stood at the gateway to the city. Hey! Roared the gateman, clearing his throat and snapping smartly to attention. This is Dictionopolis, a happy kingdom advantageously located in the foothills of confusion, and caressed by a gentle breeze from the sea of knowledge. Today, by royal proclamation, is market day. Have you come to buy or sell? I beg your pardon? Said Milo. Buy or sell! Buy or sell! Repeated the gateman impatiently. Which is it? You must have come here for some reason. Well, Milo began. Come now, if you don't have a reason, you must at least have an explanation, or certainly an excuse, interrupted the gateman. Milo shook his head. Very serious, the gateman said, shaking his head. Also, you can't get in without a reason, he thought for a moment, and then continued. Wait a minute. Maybe I have an old one you can use. He took to a battered suitcase from the gatehouse and began to rummage busily through it, mumbling to himself. No, this won't do. No, this is fine, he cried triumphantly, holding up a small medallion on a chain. He dusted it off, and engraved on one side were the words, Why not? That's a good reason for almost anything. A bit used, perhaps, but still quite serviceable. And with that, he placed it around Milo's neck, pushed back the heavy iron gate, bowed low, and motioned them into the city. I wonder what the market will be like, thought Milo as they drove through the gate. But before there was time for an answer, they had driven into an immense square crowded with long lines of stalls, heaped with merchandise and decorated in gay-colored bunting. Overhead, a large banner proclaimed,
Welcome to the word market.
and from across the square, 5 very tall, thin gentlemen, regally dressed in silks and satins, plumed hats, and buckled shoes, rushed up to the car, stopped short, mopped 5 brows, caught 5 breaths, unrolled 5 parchments, and began talking in turn.
Greetings!
Salutations!
Welcome!
Good afternoon!
Hello!
Milo nodded his head, and they went on, reading from their scrolls. By
By
order of
order,
AZ the Unabridged,
King of Dictionopolis,
Monarch of Letters,
Emperor of Phrases, Sentences, and Miscellaneous Figures of Speech,
we offer you the hospitality of our kingdom,
Country,
nation,
State,
commonwealth,
Realm,
empire,
Palatinate.
principality. Do all those words mean the same thing? Gasped Milo.
Of course.
Certainly.
Precisely.
Exactly.
Yes.
They replied in order. Well then, said Milo, not understanding why each one said the same thing in a slightly different way. Wouldn't it be simpler to just use one? It would certainly make more sense.
Nonsense.
Ridiculous!
Fantastic.
Absurd!
Bosh.
They chorused again and continued.
We're not interested in making sense. It's not our job.
Scolded the first. Besides, explained the second, one word is as good as another, so why not use them all?
Then you don't have to choose which one is right.
Advised the third. Besides,
Besides,
sighed the fourth, if one is right, then 10 are 10 times as right.
obviously you don't know who we are.
Sneered the fifth, and they presented themselves one by one as
The Duke of Definition.
the Minister of Meaning,
The Earl of Essence.
the Count of Connotation.
The Undersecretary of Understanding.
Milo acknowledged the introduction, and as Talk growled softly, the minister explained.
We are the king's advisors, or, in more formal terms, his cabinet.
Cabinet, recited the Duke. 1. A small private room or closet, case with drawers, etc., for keeping valuables or displaying curiosities. 2. Council room for chief ministers of state. 3. A body of official advisors to the chief executive of a nation.
You see,
Continued the minister, bowing thankfully to the Duke.
Dictionopolis is the place where all the words in the world come from. They're grown right here in our orchards.
I didn't know that words grew on trees, said Milo timidly. Where did you think they grew? Shouted the Earl irritably. A small crowd began to gather to see the little boy who didn't know that headers grew on trees. I didn't know they grew at all, admitted Milo even more timidly. Several people shook their heads sadly.
Well, money doesn't grow on trees, does it?
Demanded the Count. I've heard not, said Milo. Then something must. Why not words? Exclaimed the Undersecretary triumphantly. The crowd cheered his display of logic and continued about its business.
To continue,
Continued the minister impatiently.
once a week by royal proclamation, the word market is held here in the great square, and people come from everywhere to buy the words they need or trade in the words they haven't used.
Our job, said the Count, is to see that all the words sold are proper ones, for it wouldn't do to sell someone a word that had no meaning or didn't exist at all. For instance, if you bought a word like gulpska, where would you use it? It would be difficult, thought Milo. But there were so many words that were difficult, and he knew hardly any of them.
But we never choose which ones to use,
Explained the Earl as they walked toward the market stalls.
for as long as they mean what they mean to mean, we don't care if they make sense or nonsense.
Innocence or magnificence, added the Count.
Reticence or common sense,
Said the Undersecretary. That seems simple enough, said Milo, trying to be polite. Easy as falling off a log, cried the Earl, falling off a log with a loud thump.
Must you be so clumsy?
Shouted the Duke. All I said was, began the Earl, rubbing his head.
We heard you.
Said the minister angrily.
And you'll have to find an expression that's less dangerous.
The Earl dusted himself off as the others snickered audibly. You see, cautioned the Count, you must pick your words very carefully and be sure to say just what you intend to say. And now we must leave to make preparations for the royal banquet,
You'll be there, of course.
said the minister. But before Milo had a chance to say anything, they were rushing off across the square as fast as they had come. Enjoy yourself in the market, shouted back the undersecretary.
Market.
Recited the Duke.
An open space or covered building in which.
And that was the last Milo heard as they disappeared into the crowd. I never knew words could be so confusing, Milo said to Talk as he bent down to scratch the dog's ear.
Only when you use a lot to say a little,
Answered Talk. Milo thought this was quite the wisest thing he'd heard all day. Come, he shouted, let's see the market. It looks very exciting. Chapter 4 Confusion in the Marketplace. Indeed it was, for as they approached, Milo could see crowds of people pushing and shouting their way among the stalls, buying and selling, trading and bargaining. Huge wooden-wheeled carts streamed into the market square from the orchards, and long caravans, bound for the four corners of the kingdom, made ready to leave. Sacks and boxes were piled high, waiting to be delivered to the ships that sailed the sea of knowledge, and off to one side, a group of minstrels sang songs to the delight of those either too young or too old to engage in trade. But above all the noise and tumult of the crowd could be heard the merchants' voices loudly advertising their products.
get your fresh picked ifs, ands, and buts.
Hey, nice ripe wares and whens.
Juicy, tempting words for sale.
So many words and so many people. They were from every place imaginable, and some places even beyond that. And they were all busy sorting, choosing, stuffing things into cases. As soon as one was filled, another was begun. There seemed to be no end to the bustle and activity. Milo and Talk wandered up and down the aisles, looking at the wonderful assortment of words for sale. There were short ones and easy ones for everyday use, and long and very important ones for special occasions, and even some marvelously fancy ones packed in individual gift boxes for use in royal decrees and pronouncements.
Step right up, step right up. Fancy best quality words right here.
Announced one man in a booming voice.
Step right up, step right up. Ah, what can I do for you, little boy? How about a nice bag full of pronouns? Or maybe you'd like our special assortment of names.
Milo had never thought much about words before, but these looked so good that he longed to have some. Look, Talk, he cried. Aren't they wonderful?
They're fine, if you have something to say.
Replied Talk in a tired voice, for he was much more interested in finding a bone than in shopping for new words. Maybe if I buy some, I can learn how to use them, said Milo eagerly as he began to pick through the words in the stall. Finally, he chose three which looked particularly good to him: quagmire, flabbergast, and upholstery. He had no idea what they meant, but they looked very grand and elegant. How much are these? He inquired, and when the man whispered the answer, he quickly put them back on the shelf and started to walk on.
Why not take a few pounds of happies?
Advised the salesman.
They're much more practical and very useful for happy birthday, happy new year, happy days, and happy go lucky.
I'd like to very much, began Milo, but
Or perhaps you'd be interested in a package of goods, always handy for good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and goodbye.
he suggested. Milo did want to buy something, but the only money he had was the coin he needed to get back through the toll booth. And Talk, of course, had nothing but the time. No, thank you, replied Milo. We're just looking. And they continued on through the market. As they turned down the last aisle of stalls, Milo noticed a wagon that seemed different from the rest. On its side was a small, neatly lettered sign that said,
Do it yourself.
and inside were 26 bins filled with all the letters of the alphabet from A to Z.
These are for people who like to make their own words.
The man in charge informed him.
You can pick any assortment you like, or buy a special box complete with all letters, punctuation marks, and a book of instructions. Here, taste an A. They're very good.
Milo nibbled carefully at the letter and discovered that it was quite sweet and delicious, just the way you'd expect an A to taste.
I knew you'd like it.
Laughed the letter man, popping two G's and an R into his mouth and letting the juice drip down his chin.
A's are one of our most popular letters. All of them aren't that good.
He confided in a low voice.
Take the Z, for instance, very dry and sawdusty. And the X, why, it tastes like a trunk full of stale air. That's why people hardly ever use them. But most of the others are quite tasty. Try some more.
He gave Milo an I, which was icy and refreshing, and Talk a crisp, crunchy C.
Most people are just too lazy to make their own words.
He continued.
But it's much more fun.
Is it difficult? I'm not much good at making words, admitted Milo, spitting the pits from a P.
Perhaps I can be of some assistance. ASSISTANCE.
Buzzed an unfamiliar voice, and when Milo looked up, he saw an enormous bee, at least twice his size, sitting on top of the wagon.
I am the spelling bee.
Announced the spelling bee.
Don't be alarmed. ALARMED.
Talk ducked under the wagon, and Milo, who was not overly fond of normal-sized bees, began to back away slowly.
I can spell anything. ANYTHING.
He boasted, testing his wings.
Try me, try me.
Can you spell goodbye? Suggested Milo as he continued to back away. The bee gently lifted himself into the air and circled lazily over Milo's head.
Perhaps. PERHAPS. You are under the misapprehension. MASAPPREHENSION. That I am dangerous.
He said, turning a smart loop to the left.
Let me assure ASSURE you that my intentions are peaceful. PEACEFUL.
And with that, he settled back on top of the wagon and fanned himself with one wing.
Now,
He panted.
think of the most difficult word you can, and I'll spell it. Hurry up, hurry up.
And he jumped up and down impatiently. He looks friendly enough, thought Milo, not sure just how friendly a friendly bumblebee should be, and tried to think of a very difficult word. Spell vegetable, he suggested, for it was one that always troubled him at school.
That is a difficult one,
Said the bee, winking at the letterman.
Let me see now.
He frowned and wiped his brow and paced slowly back and forth on top of the wagon.
How much time do I have?
Just 10 seconds, cried Milo excitedly. Count them off, Talk.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear,
The bee
oh
repeated,
dear.
continuing to pace nervously. Then, just as the time ran out, he spelled as fast as he could.
VEGETABLE. Correct, correct.
Shouted the letterman, and everyone cheered. Can you spell everything? Said Milo admiringly.
Just about.
Replied the bee with a hint of pride in his voice.
You see, years ago, I was just an ordinary bee, minding my own business, smelling flowers all day and occasionally picking up part time work in people's bonnets. Then one day I realized that I'd never amount to anything without an education, and being naturally adept at spelling, I decided that what I should do was
Boulder
to.
Dash! Shouted a booming voice, and from around the wagon stepped a large beetle-like insect dressed in a lavish coat, striped pants, checked vest, spats, and a derby hat. Let me repeat, Boulder Dash! He shouted again, swinging his cane and clicking his heels in midair. Come now, don't be ill-mannered. Isn't someone going to introduce me to the little boy?
This
Said the bee with complete disdain.
is the humbug, a very dislikable fellow.
Nonsense! Everyone loves a humbug! Shouted the humbug. As I was saying to the king just the other day.
You've never met the king.
Accused the bee angrily. Then, turning to Milo, he said,
Don't believe a thing this old fraud says.
Bosh! Replied the humbug. We're an old and noble family, honourable to the core, insecticus humbugium, if I may use the Latin. Why, we fought in the Crusades with Richard the Lionheart, crossed the Atlantic with Columbus, blazed trails with the pioneers, and today many members of the family hold prominent government positions throughout the world. History is full of humbugs.
A very pretty speech. Speech.
Sneered the bee.
Now, why don't you go away? I was just advising the lad of the importance of proper spelling.
Bah! Said the bug, putting an arm around Milo. As soon as you learn to spell one word, they ask you to spell another. You can never catch up, so why bother? Take my advice, my boy, and forget about it, as my great-great-great-grandfather George Washington Humbug used to say.
Woo, sir!
Shouted the bee very excitedly.
Are an imposter. Impostor, who can't even spell his own name.
A slavish concern for the composition of words is the sign of a bankrupt intellect, roared the humbug, waving his cane furiously. Milo didn't have any idea what this meant, but it seemed to intimidate the spelling bee. Infuriate the spelling bee, who flew down and knocked off the humbug's hat with his wing. Be careful! Shouted Milo as the bug swung his cane again, catching the bee on the foot and knocking over the box of W's.
My foot!
Shouted the bee. My hat! Shouted the bug, and the fight was on. The spelling bee buzzed dangerously in and out of the range of the humbug's wildly swinging cane as they menaced and threatened each other, and the crowd stepped back out of danger. There must be some other way to, began Milo, and then he yelled, Watch out! But it was too late. There was a tremendous crash as the humbug in his great fury tripped into one of the stalls, knocking it into another, then another, then another, then another, until every stall in the marketplace had been upset and the words lay scrambled in great confusion all over the square. The bee, who had tangled himself in some bunting, toppled to the ground, knocking Milo over on top of him, and lay there shouting,
Help! Help! There's a little boy on me!
The bug sprawled untidily on a mound of squashed letters, and Talk, his alarm ringing persistently,
Purring, purring,
was
purring,
buried under a pile of words.
purring. That's the
And
end of the chapter, you guys. What a cliffhanger.
join
What's
us
gonna
next time
happen?
for such an exciting conclusion to that rumble.
Oh, speaking, there actually is someone who joined us last time who's going to be coming back just to answer some questions that you might have for him, some audience questions we received.
Ooh.
Um, Here, I'll go get him. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present um, Milo Ventimiglia? Oh, hey guys, what's
Milo!
up? Really? Hi, how's it going?
Wow, it's so great to have you back, Milo.
Yeah, of course, I just like I said, I don't have a lot going on in quarantine. I've just been, hitting the beach, hitting the waves. Now I'm back here. Just trying to help you guys out. I care about just, we all were beginners once.
Yeah, we're all beginners at some point, and it's really great that you're here to give us some deeper insight on Phantom Tollbooth. I know you said actually you said that you were the inspiration for the character of
Yeah,
Milo,
that's
correct?
right. Yeah.
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 So, quick question. I don't
Uh-huh.
believe that you had been born yet when the book was released.
Oh,
So, how are you
yeah.
the inspiration for Milo?
Yeah, a lot of people they think you know, time. Well, as we know from the book, time is kind of like this thing that you can go in and out of, man. And like, that's just, you saw my show, This Is Us, all about time travel, right? It's pretty much based on my life.
So are you saying that This Is Us is actually a form of biographical television show?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can actually see a lot of connections between the Phantom Tollbooth and This Is Us.
Huh. Well, I guess I'll have to
Yeah.
check out your show.
Hey, you haven't watched it yet? And I've been
Uh
watching your YouTube show.
yeah, I mean you're
I mean,
clearly
I keep coming back here, you said
Milo,
that.
listen. You're clearly a more consummate professional than I am. I mean, you have your own television show. I mean, clearly this just speaks
Yeah,
to your credibility as an actor and a man of the theater.
it's just kind of like because I watched your show, and the last time I was here, you told me that it was unrealistic that my relationship with Rory could be rekindled, and now you're saying you haven't watched my show.
Actually, I'm
I
saying
don't
that
think
you are a man of a high caliber, and I'm sure my
I think
friend the humbug would agree.
I think I have to go. This is not a fun time.
Milo,
Oh, it's the humbug.
you are a beautiful man, and I can concur that Robert here means only the best for you. My good sir, you are a wonderful individual, and he will be watching your show post haste.
Yeah, well, when I come back next week, I do expect you to fill me in on what's been happening with This Is Us.
How many episodes are there in this TV series?
All right, I gotta go catch some waves, some night waves. I
All
gotta
right,
go.
all right. Bye, Milo. Thanks for coming and joining us today.
Robert, how could you be rude to Milo again?
I did not mean to be rude to Milo.
I don't know. Well, I guess we'll just see like if you can handle yourself appropriately when Milo comes next time.
It turns out that honesty is rudeness. Oh dear.
Well, I think it's kind of like that thing where like you've seen someone's work so much that you think you have a familiarity with them and like they're your friend, but
They're not really your
Milo's
friend.
Milo's not your friend. You can't talk to him that way.
You can't tell him the reality of the situation.
You
You have to
can't.
butter him up.
Uh-huh. Well, you just have to, you know. Anyway, really good job this week, everybody.
Great
I
job.
think we did well.
Great job in the chat there.
Yeah, great job,
We
everybody.
we
Great
don't need to call
job.
911. We're good.
Yeah, I'm fine now, as you can see. um, well, let's next week, or we're gonna be back on Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So Milo can come in right before he catches his night waves. Um, yeah, thank you for
Yeah,
being here.
thanks
I think,
thanks everyone for joining us.
yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye everyone. We'll catch you Wednesday.
Bye.